Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today I'm going to be doing a for hire deck profile. So I'm really excited for this one because this deck is a really budget deck. When it first came out, it really wasn't, but now it is a really budget deck. And I'm super excited for this deck because you can definitely build this deck for like less than 10 bucks, which is actually crazy that you can build a decently competitive deck that you could carry to locals and actually top locals with in this day and age. So, without further ado, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification, become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon because we have some really cool rewards for you guys, like getting a signed card, getting your name in the description of every single video, or even getting your choice of a deck profile every single month that you are a patron. So, let's get straight on into this, guys. So, the reason I say that this deck is probably one of the most budget decks of all time is because it actually had the most reprints in the legendary gold sarcophagus box, which was really cool that this deck got completely reprinted. Yes, you can still hollow it out, and it's a little bit expensive by hollowing it out, but it's super budget. So, first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Raphael, the champion for hire. This card is basically the main deck boss monster of the deck. I love the artwork of this card because basically what this card does is if this card is special summoned, you can excavate the top cards of your deck equal to the number of monsters for hire you control with different names, and except another copy of himself. And if you do, you get to add one of those cards from your deck to your hand. Shovel the rest back in the deck. And then when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can quick effect discard a for hire monster, or one card for hire, and negate the activation. And if you do, you can only use this effect once per turn. One copy of Wiz, the Sage for hire. Wiz is quite the whiz at negating monster effects compared to Raphael negating or spell and traps, which is still pretty good, because basically what this card does is if it's special summoned, you can gain 500 life points for each monster for hire you control with a different name, except another copy of itself. And then when you control, when your opponent activates a spell or trap, you can quick effect discard one card for hire to negate the activation if you do destroy it, or negate the activation, which is really cool. One copy of Dinah, the hero for hire. Dinah is a really good card in here too because he lets you banish cards from the graveyard, because if he's special summoned, you can banish cards from your opponent's graveyard up to the number for hire monsters you control with different names. And then also your monsters your opponent control cannot declare an attack, or cannot target monsters for hire you control for attacks except him, which is pretty good because he's 2,500 attack, so that's pretty big. 2 copies of Bravo. Bravo is where they start getting a little bit interesting with their effects, because they all share the ability that during your main phase you can special summon one monster for hire from your hand except another copy of themselves. And then if a monster for hire is special summoned while you control this card, then you can activate a particular ability. With Bravo, he makes all the monsters that you currently control gain 500 life or 500 attack points, which is really cool. I like that attack boost. It really helps out. It brings him out to 2,400, which is pretty big. 3 copies of Seal. Seal has the same effect. All of the level 4 and lower ones have the ability that you can special summon a for hire monster if you control this card once per turn, except another copy of themselves. And then if a monster is special summoned, then you get to trigger a particular effect. Like this one lets you target a monster for hire in your graveyard and add it to your hand. 3 copies of Beat. Beat has an awesome effect. Beat lets you search and special summon, which is really cool. I really like that effect. 2 copies of Helmer lets you draw a card and then discard a card. 2 copies of Recon. Recon lets you pop a set card on the field. 2 copies of Donpa. Donpa lets you pop a face-up card on the field. And then 3 copies of Flo, Messenger for hire. Flo is the most insane one of them all. What Flo does is she lets you, during your main phase, special summon a monster for hire. And then she also has the ability that if a monster for hire is special summoned while you control this card, you can target them for a hire monster in your graveyard and then special summon that monster, but place it on the bottom of the deck if it leaves the field, which is not that big of a deal because it helps you go into Falgo so much easier. And something that you will notice is all of your for hire monsters are different types, except for Donpa and Recon. Warrior, this one is a Beast Warrior, and this is a Reptile, this is a Beast Warrior, Spellcaster, and a Dragon. So that's something really interesting that you have to pay attention to with the Link monster with your copy of Falgo, because Falgo requires monsters with different types, and this other effect comes into play a little bit later too. So that's it for the for hire monsters. We're going to talk about a couple monsters that we play in this deck that aren't quite for hire. You can't hire them for any amount of money except for buying the card. So that's something interesting. So let's get into those cards and see what we're playing. So for the hand traps that we're playing 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is really good because you just get to negate certain cards that your opponent's activating. And then 2 copies of Nibiru. I actually have a way to search Nibiru in this deck, which is really cool to be able to search the Nibiru on the first turn. It's not, you have it in the extra deck, but it's not like super going to happen all the time because you have to have 2 level 4s. I will tell you guys, it is Gallant Granite that you play in the extra deck, so you can just special summon Gallant Granite, search your copy of Nibiru, which is super cool. I really like being able to do that. But that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into those spell cards. So for the spell cards that we're playing in this deck, we're playing 3 copies of Call by the Grave. The 3 copies of Call by the Grave come in super, super handy because basically what they do is stop your opponent's hand traps, which comes in really, really clutch a lot of the times. 1 copy of Rhoda, which the Rhoda is only going to be able to search your copy of Beat, but Beat is the searcher of the deck, so you always want to open up a Beat and a Raphael because it negates monster effects and gets you that search, which is super helpful, and you always end on one of the champions, which is really important. I call the ones that are level 4 hires champions, and all the other ones recruits, which is basically, or ship hands, essentially, because they are pirates. So basically you have the little ones that are kind of running around the ship, and then they're like the captains or the champions that you're going to be summoning all the time. 1 copy of Upstart because you just want to burn through the deck faster. So the Upstart lets you draw a card and your opponent gains 1,000 life points. This is kind of a free space that you can add anything that you want. If you want to add something like a copy of, Lightning Storm, Raigeki, anything like that, you can put it in this position. I thought about adding Raigeki because of Falgo's effect, letting you draw 3 off of a card on your opponent's side of the field getting destroyed. I really thought about putting Raigeki in here for that. And Raigeki's pretty budget, but I wanted to keep this deck super budget, so Upstart was the way I went. 1 copy of Mind Control lets you take an opponent's monster. It really helps out to link someone with Falgo because if you use 3 monsters with different types, your opponent's usually going to have something that's a different type than what you already used. So that's important to be able to keep in mind. 1 copy of Monster Reborn. Monster Reborn really helps out because you're essentially playing 4 copies of Monster Reborn in the form of Mayhem for Hire. So Mayhem for Hire is a really cool card that lets you target a for hire monster or 1 monster for hire in your graveyard and special summon it in defense position, which is a really good effect to be able to just special summon those monsters from the graveyard so you can keep playing. But basically you play 4 copies of Monster Reborn because this is a quick play Monster Reborn and this is a regular Monster Reborn. So you have 4 basically reborn spells in the entire deck, which is really good. So we have a little bit of a control aspect in the deck, which is on the traps. So we're going to move straight on into those traps, guys. So for the traps, we are going to be playing 3 copies of There Can Only Be One. I don't really understand why this card has not been hit still, but it's still really good. I think it would be funny to be able to play this card at 1 and be like, oh, I drew There Can Only Be One, my only 1 copy of There Can Only Be One. So each player can only control 1 monster of each type, which, as you guys can probably tell, is not a problem, because everything is a different type in our deck. Everything is different except for Donpa and Recon, because they're like brothers and sisters. Which everything else is like different. You have Winged Beast, Reptile, Dragon, Beast Warrior, everything in this deck. Beast, everything. It's just crazy how many types this deck has. Basically what this card does is it makes sure you can only control 1, and if you control 2, then they must send the same cards to the graveyard so they only control 1 type. So you're playing against something like Dragon Link, anything that's not Sky Striker, because Sky Striker mained this for a long time because it was such a good card. If you're playing against zombies, anything, you flip this card and it's like, oh, you're going to rivalry me? Okay, There Can Only Be One you, and you can only have your baller draw it now, which is funny. Because now we're going to have a good time where I'm going to summon Raphael and you're going to activate an effect and I'm just going to pop it, which is going to be fun. Or I'm going to negate it and then we're going to stare at one another for an hour. So that's just something interesting for you guys. This deck card is really, really good in the deck, and I highly recommend that you play this card. This is probably the most expensive card in the deck. I don't know how much this card is now, but I think I'm pretty sure it got reprinted in Dual Devastators, but don't quote me on that. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. Speaking of which, if you don't want to play this, you can play Solemn Judgment instead if you want to go even more budget than that, because Solemn Judgment just did get a reprint. Then we play 3 copies of Falgo. Falgo, the Justice for Hire, is the big monsters you're always going to want to summon all the time in this deck. This card is insane and is the biggest boss monster in the deck. Like, I know he is, like, the other monsters are bigger, but this card's like the big card of the deck that you want to summon. He can be used as link material, which is not that big of a deal because you're not going to want to use him as link material. And if this card is link summon, you can special summon one monster for hire with a different type from the 3 monsters used as link material for this card from your deck in defense position. And if a card your opponent controls is destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can draw a card. And if there are 3 or more monsters for hire with different names on your field, you can draw 2 additional cards. So you can draw 3 cards off your deck for basically for free. That is really, really good. Okay, now for the rest of the extra deck, I will say you could stop the extra deck right here, play 3, and then pass, and that's it. And you could get out and be good. But I do play some suggestion cards for you guys. You don't have to play these, but basically Falgo plus whatever you have, if you're looking for a budget build, is what you play. Falgo is going to be the one you're going to summon all the time in this deck. So here's my suggestions for the other cards of the deck. So first off, we're going to play Boral Sword because Boral Sword helps OTK. I would recommend at least one rank 4, like a Boral Load, Boral Sword, a copy of Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax, Topologic, whatever you want to play. 1 copy of Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax. Avermax helps you OTK a little bit easier. Appaloosa gives you additional negates. Appaloosa comes in pretty clutch, I will say. Appaloosa is really good because you just have all those negates on the field. Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos. This card is absolutely insane in this deck because you can use a copy of one of your champions, except for Dinah, to summon this card, and it gives you pops and removes and stuff like that, and it gives 1500 attack. This card's really good. Unicorn because it bounces stuff. Phoenix because it pops spells and traps, and then Cerberus because it pops monsters. I will say, if I'm going to play this deck, I would highly recommend that you at least play Cerberus and Phoenix because these cards are relatively cheap. They're less than $10. I know they're less than $10. I haven't looked at them in a long time because I had these a long time, but these cards I know were still less than $10. But basically what they do is they trigger the Falgo's effect, because if you put 4 monsters on or 5 monsters on the field and Falgo's in your extra monster zone, you can link into one of these too, and then pop something by discarding something from your hand, and then trigger the Falgo to draw cards, which is super nice. 1 copy of Relinquish Anima because you can use this card with your Messenger. Same thing with the Link Rebo. You can use this with Messenger to be able to negate attacks. Galliant Granite to search the Nibiru. Abyss Dweller because it shuts down graveyards. And then 1 copy of number 60 because number 60 boosts the attack of monsters. That's pretty much it. The reason you play those is because you can use Bravo or your Seal to go into those together to go into these. It's really easy to put 2 level 4s on the field, especially with Beat being able to search the one you're missing. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a really fun deck to play around with. I really enjoy playing this deck. Really, really budget, really fun deck. I highly recommend this for a beginner, especially if you guys are trying to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! This is a fun deck to play around with because basically you just normal summon your first for hire and then swarm with all the other for hires, and you learn how chains work and you learn how activating effects work, and it just works out. It's a lot of fun. So anyways, guys, that's it for the deck, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad. Definitely tell me what you think of this video down in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Check out the Patreon. See you later, guys.